Deluge in South Africa. Historic floods batter the nation. Cape Town, South Africa is facing one of its most severe and complex environmental emergencies in decades. A series of relentless weather systems, culminating in an intense cutoff low system in early May 2026, has triggered catastrophic flooding across multiple provinces. The hardest-hit regions, including the Western Cape's famous Garden Route, the Eastern Cape, and parts of the Northern Cape, have been left reeling under the weight of destroyed infrastructure, displaced communities, and lost lives. With more than 300 millimeters, 11.8 inches, of rain falling in a matter of days in some areas, local authorities, humanitarian organizations, and emergency services are working around the clock to execute rescues and provide relief. The scale of the devastation has once again brought into sharp focus South Africa's deep vulnerability to extreme weather events, fueled by shifting global climate patterns. The cataclysm, an unprecedented meteorological onslaught. The disaster unfolding across South Africa is not the result of a single isolated storm, but rather the climax of a highly active and volatile weather cycle. The region has experienced persistent, heavy rains since late 2025, which led to a declaration of a national disaster in January 2026. However, the situation reached a critical breaking point between May 5th and May 9th, 2026, when an exceptionally powerful cutoff low-pressure system stalled over the southern coast. The science behind the storm. A cutoff low is a notorious weather phenomenon in South Africa, characterized by a low-pressure system that becomes completely detached from the main westerly wind flow. Deprived of the steering currents that would normally push it quickly across the continent, the system lingers over an area, drawing massive amounts of warm, moist air from the Indian Ocean and dumping it systematically over land. In this instance, the cutoff low collided with a cold front, intensifying the rate of precipitation. According to the South African Weather Service, SAWS, the system triggered level 8 disruptive rainfall warnings, the second highest warning level on the country's emergency scale. For parts of the Western and Eastern Cape, rainfall records shattered. The sheer volume of water dumped by this system has stunned meteorologists. In several areas along the Garden Route and the adjacent interior, monitoring stations recorded unprecedented rainfall totals. Garden Route District, upwards of 300 millimeters, 11.8 inches, of rain fell within a 48-hour window. Eastern Cape River basins, multiple catchment areas received more than 150% of their average monthly rainfall in just 3 days. The interior, even arid regions of the Karoo and the Northern Cape recorded historic totals, overwhelming dry riverbeds and unpaved drainage systems. The Garden Route, globally renowned for its pristine coastal forests, lagoons, and tourist towns, has become the epicenter of the current crisis. Local officials have officially classified this event as the worst flooding the region has experienced in at least 3 decades. Infrastructure paralysis and isolated communities. On Saturday, May 9, 2026, the Garden Route District Municipality announced that at least 45 major roads across the eastern parts of the region had been closed due to severe damage, mudslides, and deep water. Gerhard Otto, the head of disaster management for the municipality, described the scene as one of widespread devastation. Major arterial routes, including the iconic N9, the Robinson Pass from the Oudtshoorn side, Swartberg Pass, and the famous Maringsport Pass, were shut down. Maringsport, a critical canyon road that connects the coastal belt to the Great Karoo, was transformed into a raging torrent of water, mud, and boulders, making it entirely impassable. The closure of these roads has effectively severed connections between towns. Communities such as Nisna, Wilderness, and portions of George have found themselves isolated, with supply lines cut off and local emergency services unable to reach them by conventional means. The storm did not spare the region's rich ecological reserves. South African National Parks, SAN Parks, reported widespread disruption and structural damage across the Garden Route National Park. Heavy winds and torrential rains brought down massive trees, triggered landslides, and washed away footbridges and hiking trails. Emergency rescue operations took a dramatic turn as search and rescue teams, supported by military and private helicopters, were deployed to evacuate stranded residents and tourists. In Nisna, A tragedy occurred when an uprooted tree crushed a vehicle, resulting in the death of a female motorist. Along the coast, numerous tourists trapped in remote chalets and hiking routes had to be airlifted to safety as rising river waters cut off all escape routes. Meanwhile, the garden route dominated headlines due to its high-profile tourist areas. The humanitarian crisis in the Eastern Cape and Northern Cape provinces is equally grave, characterized by flooded informal settlements and overflowing dams. In the Eastern Cape, the sheer volume of water entering reservoir systems pushed local infrastructure past its limits. By May 7th, the massive Kruger Dam exceeded 100% capacity, prompting emergency spillway releases. The sudden rush of water down the Gamtoos River basin created an immediate, life-threatening situation for downstream residents. The Kruger municipality immediately issued mandatory evacuation orders for low-lying areas, particularly near the mouth of the Crom River and within the Gamtoos Valley. In Kingsway Village, emergency teams had to scramble to rescue over 40 residents who had become completely trapped in their homes as the river burst its banks. In the Ndlambi local municipality, Speaker Andile Marasi confirmed that the damage to property and public infrastructure was immense. We are on the ground conducting physical assessments, but the scale is overwhelming. Roads are gone, homes are flooded, and families have lost everything, Marasi stated in a briefing. Provincial departments have stepped in to distribute emergency blankets, mattresses, and clean drinking water to displaced residents huddled in makeshift community halls. Further inland, the Northern Cape province is dealing with its own distinct disaster. Though typically an arid to semi-arid region, the John Talo Getsu municipality was hit by unprecedented, heavy downpours that claimed 3 lives. The provincial government reported that 85 rural villages have been heavily affected or completely cut off. 26 bridges have been washed away or structurally compromised. 26 schools were forced to close their doors, halting education for more than 13,000 learners. The Northern Cape's MEC for Roads and Public Works, highlighting the systemic issues exposed by the storm, called for an immediate overhaul of provincial building standards. The department has urged mining companies and private corporations operating in the mineral-rich province to assist in rebuilding infrastructure and providing heavy machinery to clear mud and debris. Behind the statistics of rainfall millimeters and road closures lie human stories of survival, loss, and community solidarity. Miracle rescues amidst the chaos. Despite the tragedy, rescue operations have yielded remarkable stories of survival. In the Little Karoo, a dry region suddenly turned into an inland sea. Emergency workers successfully executed the high-stakes rescue of a mother and her newborn baby. The family had been trapped in their remote home by rapidly rising floodwaters with no access to food or medical care. In another operation, humanitarian relief teams and the South African Red Cross Society, SARCS, managed to navigate washed-out dirt roads using specialized off-road vehicles to deliver food parcels and baby formula to isolated farming communities. As is often the case in South African natural disasters, the country's stark socio-economic divides have dictated who bears the brunt of the damage. Informal settlements, often built on the fringes of urban areas, in low-lying valleys, or along riverbanks, have been completely devastated. In these settlements, dwellings constructed from corrugated iron, wood, and plastic offer little resistance to torrential rain and mudslides. Lacking formal stormwater drainage, these neighborhoods turn into muddy swamps within hours of heavy rain. Thousands of families have watched their life savings and personal belongings wash away in a matter of minutes. The government's disaster response teams, alongside non-governmental organizations like Gift of the Givers, have set up temporary shelters in community centers, churches, and school halls. However, managing these crowded shelters presents its own challenges, including sanitation concerns and the risk of waterborne diseases. As South Africa transitions from immediate search and rescue operations to long-term recovery, the disaster has reignited critical conversations about municipal planning, infrastructure resilience, and the undeniable reality of climate change. For now, the focus remains on saving lives, restoring basic services, and ensuring that the thousands of displaced citizens housed in temporary shelters have access to food, warmth, and dignity. The spirit of Ubuntu, the African philosophy of communal unity and shared humanity, is highly visible as ordinary citizens, local businesses, and emergency services pull together to navigate one of the worst natural disasters in the country's modern history.